Our first Liberty Live team caught an early flight to Nashville, a town where many people go with dreams of hitting it big in country music. But we were not here for guitar picking. We wanted to meet up with this crowd of young conservatives, hundreds of students from several local college campuses. They gathered to hear from top-notch speakers such as country music star John Rich, TV commentator Tommy Lauren, and First Liberty's Kelly Shackelford. Here's a taste of what it was like to be here.
We were built on people that disagree. That's why tonight is so important. This debate is so important. Debate makes it great. You have to have a debate. Both sides have to be out there pushing their ideas forward.
We need to make sure that the silent majority gets a little bit louder. They're loud. We can be louder.
So I've kind of always been involved, but in the last year with COVID, I've just seen how important it is and how quickly our freedoms were stripped, and we were told where we could be, how we could socialize, and that just isn't okay as an American.
We have the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And that maintains, no matter who comes up against us, they cannot erase those words. They are still there. We will always fight for those words, and we will support people who fight for those words.
Our founders called it our first freedom. It's the first two clauses of the First Amendment because they understood you lose this freedom, you'll lose all your freedoms. The best way I can describe why this is the one thing that a totalitarian regime will never allow are citizens who hold an allegiance to one higher than the government. So whenever that type of oppressive regime comes in, the first flashpoint will always be religious freedom. You won't find the church or religion having any power in any socialist or totalitarian country, that they are a threat to the authoritarian power structure.
And I feel culture is, it shrouds this whole thing called politics and makes it so complicated so people like us and people younger than us don't want to get into it. And we just listen to the people that's involved already and just assume that they have our best interests at heart. So the moment that we actually start to go down that rabbit hole, that's when the shunning starts. That's when everything crazy begins to happen in people's lives and we don't talk about it.
And I tell people this all the time. Every bad idea starts in California and it spreads everywhere else. You think I'm kidding? Look around. They were the first state to shut down. They are the state that has maintained the lockdowns, the infringements, the closures, and has taken away freedom from their own people. Has them living on unemployment checks, has them sitting by their mailbox hoping that they get that check just so they can sustain themselves, so they can get them hooked on the government. That's a California model. Guess what else is a California model? Mail-in voting, voter fraud, California model.
I'm from California. In California, you are not allowed to worship or sing. It has been mandated that is against the rules of California by the governor. So I disagree with that because it is directly against religious liberty. Once our religious liberties are that they are gone, their names deemed that we don't have them anymore by the government, then the other political freedoms that we will have will shortly follow after that. So I think it's so important that we protect our religious liberties first above everything, because our political freedoms will follow right after that and will be protected as well, especially if our religious liberties continue to be protected.
The types of cases we're seeing are beyond anything we've ever seen. They're more vicious, they're more outrageous. One of our newest cases is a blind woman who's actually been banned from sharing a book of the Gospel of John in the parks. Because she gave a book of the copy of the Gospel of John, she has now been banned from the public park for 2 years and the public library for 2 years. This is not kind of cases we used to have to deal with, but we're having to deal with them now. Look at all the COVID cases, right? I mean, all of a sudden you give power to governors, mayors, people who've never had this power. What's the first flashpoint? What's the big issue around the country? It's churches, it's religious freedom. It's whether they can tell you can go to the liquor store, but you can't go to church.
To ask people to not be able to praise God and worship and be together. Even abiding by all the COVID rules is terrible. Without COVID's been used to leverage and gain more power over the American people, and I think it's totally wrong. And quite frankly, I think it's evil in some senses.
Well, to be completely honest, if we lose religious liberty, everything that we have stood for, freedom, capitalism, everything goes away. Religious liberty, everything that's great about our country stems from religious liberty.
We've had 10 cases so far during COVID. We've won every single one of these cases. And everywhere we win on behalf of the church, within days, if not a week, all the businesses are opened up. Because you know what? Our churches are protected by free speech, free exercise of religion, freedom of assembly. If the church can't win, the businesses have no chance of winning. And so our first freedom has to lead the way, and we're seeing it now. We're in the midst of a huge battle right now with the churches. I mean, we're literally in a fight over whether the government is going to control our churches. If the government can say there's an emergency, your constitutional rights are suspended, then you don't have any constitutional rights. Because the government will say, well, climate change is an emergency. Or, they can come up with whatever emergency they want. So we've got to win these cases. Now, I'll tell you one thing. I feel a lot better about our chances of winning on behalf of this fundamental First Amendment right of religious freedom with Amy Coney Barrett on the United States.
She's an originalist. No matter what her personal preferences are, which she even says those don't affect her, she just believes, okay, I'm going to have the law before me, and what does that mean? What was it mean? What did it mean when it was passed? What did it mean when they originally wrote it? And that's what the founders intended when they had it written down, because if you have someone coming in and taking their own spin on something, you're going to have 6 different ways to Sunday people taking their own interpretations on it.
So often when we see women portrayed in politics or Hollywood or whatever it is, we're basically given this message that there's one type of woman that's acceptable. And it can be frustrating when you're constantly hearing these same people say we're for women, but they know they're not really for me as a woman or my ideas.
People want to rewrite history, rewrite the Constitution, and we need people to say how it is.
Because to have somebody that's willing to stand up and be strong and courageous against the evils in this world, which are prevalent and people don't want to talk about it as much as they should, but you have to understand what the evil people can do so that you aren't a victim of it yourself.
She has proven that she's willing to protect our freedoms and she will fight for our freedoms. She is, I believe the term is originalist. So she goes back to the Constitution and she doesn't let her sort of personal biases get involved with her interpreting the Constitution, which is super important because that Constitution is there to protect our rights that were given, that precede government that were given to us by God.
I've been doing this for 31 years, and I'm telling you, what's happening right now is beyond anything I could ever imagine. And that is, we are changing history. I am watching religious freedom being opened up in ways I never thought possible in my lifetime. Why is this happening? It's happening because the judges we're putting on the court. Okay? As soon as this administration came in, everything changed. Always in the past, we picked judges by, hey, I helped you get elected president. My brother's a judge. Why don't you put them on the court? That's not how things are working this time. This president decided when he ran as a candidate, I'm going to pick a certain type of judge. I'm going to farm this out to experts. I'm going to pick the most highly credentialed people with the right judicial philosophy who won't be politicians and push their beliefs on all of us, but will simply follow the law, the Constitution, and the statute, and follow an approach called originalism, which means looking at the original meaning. What a different idea, right? And the result of this is we are filling the courts with excellent judges. 220 at this point, the youngest ever appointed in the history of the country. They're going to be on there for decades. Okay, these are the judges that are going to be there as you go through life. This is changing the future.
America is on the brink of something. Whether it's good or bad, I think is up to us and a lot of the kids you see in here. Especially, it was an honor to get to hear Mr. Kelly Shackelford talk tonight, because to hear him talk about Amy Coney Barrett and especially religious freedoms and the cases that y'all are fighting is amazing, because I believe that without that, we don't have the America that makes America America.